Hello and welcome to today's Green Business Podcast. In today's podcast, I'm talking to Simon Green. As we are winding down from Eco 2 and are slowly gearing up towards Eco 3 or Eco 2.1, however you want to look at it, I wanted to have a discussion with someone who has been at the coalface of eco delivery and who really understands all the intricacies of delivering eco projects. So step in Simon Green. Simon is a sustainability consultant who is also the chairman of the London Rebuilding Society. He was head of sustainability at Lakehouse, focusing on eco project delivery amongst many other things. He also has had numerous of other senior roles related to sustainability, most notably at the Energy Saving Trust and the BRE. So who better to have this chat with than Simon? He really understands what it takes to deliver eco projects. So let me know what you think. I hope you enjoy the podcast. Do get in touch with any questions, and I hope you enjoy it.
My name is Simon Green. I'm a sustainable energy consultant. I've been in this sector for about 25 years, working both in policy and commercial activity. My previous role, I was head of sustainability at Lakehouse, and I was also head of development at the Energy Saving Trust. And I just need to add, anything I say here is my personal opinion and not necessarily associated with any of my previous employers.
Same here. That's a good start. So I thought, as we are winding down from Eco 2 and rolling into Eco 3, I wanted to have a discussion with someone who's been what I dubbed the coalface of eco delivery. I think it's been a very interesting policy, but I think really if you've had to deliver it, you've had quite a few experiences, and I know you've been at the coalface of the delivery. So my question is, if you'd have a review of Eco 2, how did you find getting to grips with Eco 2 and then starting to deliver it, and then how would you review the scheme for the last couple of years?
Okay, I think in terms of undertaking a kind of a review, I think we need to go back to 2013 when it was originally defined and what were the original policy objectives. Yeah. And I think, we tend to forget really, or perhaps it's got slightly, changed, but, originally it was going to be a multi-billion pound programme working in tandem with the Green Deal to catalyse, millions of pounds worth of investment, both in the fuel rich and the fuel poor. And as a consequence, when we originally started this in 2013, when I was at Lakehouse, we could offer social landlord clients, significant levels of funding. The pounds a tonne was 60, 70, 80 pounds a tonne. And the market was actually quite buoyant. So for us to go to social landlords was relatively easy, because in terms of the investment we could bring, it was 20, 30%. In some cases, we could do cavity wall programs entirely free. Yeah. So I think when you look at that 2013 and then how the market has changed because of government changes and arguably lobbying from energy companies that this scheme was too expensive, we've gone from that, which was relatively simple. I mean, the first year we did an awful lot of work, to where we have ended up, where a lot of the clients now think that the eco is just too inconvenient in terms of an instrument. And we're getting to a point now where the compliance costs, particularly for external wall insulation, are almost the same as the actual eco cost. So it is actually challenging. So in order to do a review, I think you need to understand what the original parameters were. And I think the original parameters, and I think Enable to Pay Green Deal programme, I think were reasonably sound. I mean, there's a lot of discussion about the detail. Mm-hmm. And the frustration, I think, for us was that just when we were getting the market and the supply chain engaged and Green Deal was beginning to take off, albeit, probably could have done some review, the market changed because of the government consultation. So, I think that, has shrouded, I think, how successful the policy has actually been.
Yeah, do you mind turning your camera a little bit just so I can see your face? Yeah. I agree with that. I actually often say exactly the same thing, particularly on the Green Deal, because I think it's very easy to sort of have a go at politicians to say, look, that policy became so complex, but it was as you say, multi-billion, but it was also mainly a support mechanism for the Green Deal. And I think we've sort of, as the Green Deal fell away, we're now looking at a standalone policy, which it wasn't originally designed to be the sort of standalone policy.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So I think, in terms of, the challenges we've faced, I mean, in terms of, most of the projects that I've done have been in London. I mean, they just are substantial, just much more difficult than, most of the work that we've done has been Hecro boilers and done a bit of district heating and also external wall insulation. But I mean, it's taken us, 2 years to get planning permission and building consent and Section 22 approvals to do large-scale programs. And so it is incredibly difficult. The quote we managed to get on Eco was 2 years ago and bears no relation to the actual spot price we get now. So it is actually very, very challenging. I'm sorry, I'm just getting a call through, but let me just stop this. Sorry.
That's okay.
I'll just stop this. Sorry, I don't know if that was interrupted. And frankly, I think, so the activity we've been doing the last 6 months last year has been considerably lower than it was the year before that and the year before that. So, and it is incredibly challenging doing work in London for the barriers I've indicated.
Yes, I think with London you've got a lot of other things, and actually I was thinking about doing some sort of presentation on that. I've done that before, really, and then I think in London you particularly have the complexity surrounding the boroughs and planning permission, very expensive stock, and then work within the M25 zone. You're sort of it's more expensive than out of that, really. What would you say were some of the sort of biggest struggles or frustrations you've experienced under Eco?
I think it was the volatility of the price and the delays. So the inertia of the market. So we would go in and tender for work or negotiate work, and we got a obviously an Eco quote then, and then 6 months later it was considered. So we were always hedging our risks on that, and that was always
because I forgot, because obviously in the last few years I've been at the supplier phase, and
yes.
Well before that, at the early days of Eco 1, the golden days, I worked at social landlords and worked with them. But I completely forgot, obviously, that you sort of have to tender, and then that, the price got so different that, it's very hard to actually put a price in when 9 months later you might be on site,
yes.
in a good case scenario,
Yeah, so I think the fundamental issue was getting the pipeline to work, and for most London clients, or most of our clients, we had to tender for this.
Yes.
So on either a framework, we were in fact on a number of frameworks, either GLA or Eco provided frameworks, we had to tender for that, so we had to give an indication of the Eco rate then, and then obviously by the time we won the tender and actually did the activity, it was actually very different, so that was a concern. The other concern I think has been, and I think you've said it in your notes here, the complexity of compliance and the cost of doing this, and I do have to question the proportionality of the requirements. I mean, they just seem to me at a level of just unnecessarily complexity to me and disproportionate to the risk. And I know the risk, and in terms of issues around the brokerage scheme, which I think you're all aware of, but the amount of resources and the costs, the search costs of actually getting projects. I mean, I think in the latest consultation they talk about debt site at a £24, assumed value of actually a search cost. But for us, it's 10 times that, more than that. So from a commercial point of view, trying to, even when you've got a secure pipeline and trying to get things called Section 20 consultations agreements with leaseholders are particularly complicated issues. And I just don't think Eco is well suited to what I think it should be doing, which are the difficult market failures, the more expensive measures. I think it's fine or comparatively easy for quick cavity wall loft or boiler replacements, but large scale carbon and fuel poverty programs, which are predominantly solid wall programs, it is not, in my view, a very efficient mechanism.
Even on the easy to treat, if you like, the amount of paperwork that comes with every single installation, as you say, is completely disproportionate. I think I've got another thing, I look at where we are with technology, and we've got VR technology. It's getting so advanced. It's almost like I've travelled through time and I'm in the future. What we can do with technology now is so advanced. And then I look at Eco. You need to have like 24 different signed documents with like with cavity wall insulation, all of that. Surely that should be digitised without having to go for an expensive solution. Surely that there should be a better way of doing this. Really.
Yeah, well, as you say, and the work that I've been doing on a Horizon 2020 program built to spec looks at all this kind of stuff, and I say it feels a 19th century Victorian process of literally paper being stamped and processed and a back office function that it doesn't seem proportionate or particularly contemporary or needed. So it's that I find probably could do some improvement. And I think the other thing is it's just the inertia of the market and the fact that it assumes that clients, like local authorities, have experts in-house that can do all this kind of stuff. I mean, a lot of them in London have had their fingers burnt by, from Eco1 being offered substantial levels of funding by a number of energy suppliers and they're being pulled. And
and again, just to probably just to stand up for the energy suppliers there. I mean, that they have to play by certain rules. If those rules change, it was a very difficult market. But if all of a sudden, it seemed a bit like when you're going around the chairs and then the music stops. Yeah, it was a little bit like that, where we're like, okay, it's a very tough one. But I also understand that you've made some very expensive agreements based on how Eco1 looked. That's completely changed. Then you have no other option but to sort of.
I understand how that happened, and I'm not, but again, I think it's an issue from government to change the policy, in so many times. And what it does, it provides. It doesn't encourage clients to come forward again when they've had. So it just leaves a poor reputation. And I think also, a lot of local authorities have lost their in-house people that can actually even begin to do this. So if you're a local authority or a housing association, how do you know who to trust when you're being offered these kind of things? And I think that is a concern.
And in my early days, when we go back to Eco1, I worked for a construction company, and the funny thing was exactly that, what you say. Direct access to the funding, and we had some very good rates, particularly compared to where we are now. And the funny thing is, you say who to trust. We would see a client where we would do the kitchens and bathrooms programs and say, actually, we might do the insulation here as well. These are the funding levels. And then, they met with managing agents who promised rates that just weren't realistic. But as you say, there was no in-house staff that could sort of establish what was realistic and what wasn't. And so, it was part of my job was to convince and explain Eco, how, the complexity of it, and then how it would work, and then what the funding rates would be. And a lot of the time, clients just didn't believe that we had a good offer, really, simply because of what they were promised through other people, and they didn't know which offer to compare to one another.
Yeah, no, so I think that is an issue, and the constantly changing, the last, I've been looking back at my notes, from 2013 to where we are now, and I think one forgets about how many profound changes there have been, and to get the supply chain, to get clients on board, and I think the other, major positive objective, it was meant to be a market transformation program. It was meant to stimulate new supply chains so that we're on a trajectory to meet our climate change targets. And we just feel that we've gone backwards considerably on this, and the supply chain have I think really been affected by this, and the amount of development work that we and others invested in Green Deal and other accreditations that are now kind of meaningless is a big concern, and I think demonstrates I think people will not be quite so understanding of new policy incentives from government, because I just think a lot of people have had their fingers burnt in this process.
I think if I look at this, I was obviously, started out with energy performance certificates, which came out of the Home Information Pack, which was a massive U-turn. I then remember looking at the feed-in tariff. Obviously, we've had quite a few U-turns there. I then got involved in, CESP at the end, and then Eco. And, the changes in Eco have just been, tremendous. And I wrote an article on this. It's, with all of these changes, you just want that longer-term sort of certainty, really, and having some certainty that actually what's in place will not change substantially.
But I think the lessons have not been learned over the last 15 years of supply-based obligations, and I think in many ways we've gone backwards. So, for example, in CESP, I remember there being additional benefit if you did multiple things, and this obsession with single measures, I mean, it seems to me ridiculous in terms of either a fuel pod or a carbon program. I mean, there are two different objectives, but that you're asking for fuel poor people to pay potential contributions for either heating or external wall installation, and it seems ridiculous to me that if you don't do a fabric first kind of approach, standard good practice, and we're putting in boilers in inherently purely inefficient. It just seems to me the whole kind of policy seems just it doesn't appear to meet either the carbon or the fuel poverty objectives. And it just almost as if good practice has gone out the window, and through expediency probably, we've ended up with a kind of a weird combination of what is relatively convenient and easy and doesn't really comply with the building physics or the economics of the situation, and that it doesn't provide a sustainable market, and it doesn't actually provide true, I think, affordable warmth solutions, and it doesn't get to the main issue of the problem. And I think that's part of the policy issue, is that it just has been so eroded, and to put it another way, you wouldn't end up now designing eco if you had a blank sheet of paper for now. But the more depressing thing is lessons learned from the previous 15 years of doing this have not been incorporated, and that I find disappointing and frustrating.
Yeah, who thought we'd be talking about the golden days of certain CESP?
Well, true, yes, and I look back at those days and thinking, well, actually, there was a lot of good stuff that came out of that doesn't appear to have been carried forward. Well, it hasn't been carried forward, and I don't see it being carried forward in Eco 3.
So we've talked about changes. What did you find of changing rules? So for me, that was a particular sort of problem surrounding. Here you've got the guidance for Ofgem publishes their guidance for suppliers, and there's guidance for the supply chain and the administration, and there was a lot of we've translated what this guidance means, this is how we do it, and then halfway through you get a guidance on saying, okay, well actually there's a change and this is how we do it. So I can see why it's being done. So the clear example would obviously be virgin lofts or U values, and obviously people are, it's a sort of, it's almost a game of, moles, and they pop up. It's, they have to deal with the suspected cases of fraud, and then have to sort of, put more and more compliance on that to sort of counteract that. But for me, the frustrating part, was when you're sort of dealing at an administrative side of this. It's very hard to actually ensure that you're always in line with what Ofgem says, and it could change from on months. So that seems to be a particular sort of, for me, that was in the last 4 or 5 years, that was a particularly tricky one, really.
Yeah, and you probably had it, but obviously in your role, you had more exposure to that. I mean, I had a compliance team that kind of dealt with that. But I think it was a way in which these programs have historically been devised. There's that kind of working group which is particularly the energy suppliers and government, and it does seem to be quite an enclosed kind of environment there, and I think a lot of people externally that wouldn't be exposed to that. I was, just because we had a compliance department, but I never felt we had a chance to respond, and in fact, often we would be sending stuff off to be banked every month, and then they say, oh no, you need to do this, you need to do this. So I think we struggled, a relatively big organisation, to keep up with that, and also hugely costly, and the risk to us was non-compliance. Which there was always a rush at the end of the month to ensure that the carbon was banked properly, and and it was very difficult to manage the actual process on a. Well, I'm sure from your construction days, it's just physically very difficult to be able to say we're going to deliver exactly those numbers by that time. You always had practicalities coming into this, and there was always a monthly issue there.
I think, and on top of that, from a construction view, you have the joy that you've got different suppliers who then have different rules.
Yes.
And then, Ofgem changing rules, it's like, oh my God, particularly from a construction point of view, it's like, oh, what do you have to do? So it's some standardisation would be very welcome.
Yeah.
So we touched on the golden days of certain CESP. Sort of looking at some of the positives, do you believe there were any sort of improvements on previous regimes? Was there anything that you think Eco did accomplish?
Well, in terms of, I mean, certainly early on, I mean, we did some amazing schemes, and schemes that otherwise wouldn't have happened. So, I mean, the first year or so, and I think, we also did lots of work with DEC through the Green Deal Fund and local authorities. So, doing area-based schemes, and interesting when I compare and contrast what we historically did and what's happening in Scotland now because of the other funding regime. Yeah, it just shows you how this thing can actually work. So I think the elements are there. And I say, so with devolution now, I mean, Scotland's gone off and is able to do an awful lot more.
I think Wales and Scotland in particular, sort of showed the way at actually what's possible. Yeah. That they were always the sort of, gold mines when, you worked as a supplier, because you knew you'd be able to get things off the ground relatively easily. And, it wasn't as much hard work as anywhere else, really, because of all the other sort of, using the other levers of funding.
Yeah. So I think as a policy instrument, I think it has the potential and did early on work. I think I personally have concerns in terms of where the new policy is going. As I say, you indicated it's sort of been done as just as a kind of almost a standalone legacy sort of incentive. I mean, how does this fit into the wider kind of government obligations to meet the Climate Change Act obligations? And it just feels it's in isolation. And I say it's just a kind of, without a Green Deal or a label to pay market and a real focus on fuel poverty, it is not going to be a carbon reduction program.
I think for me this is a wider problem. It's not just energy efficiency and how we're going to meet the 2020 and 2050 targets. I can't believe how quickly 2020 seems to be getting here.
Well, I don't know what 2030 targets, 57% reduction,
but also the wider energy strategy. Yeah, I don't know. All of it seems, like, okay, this gets onto the wider thing, but, if you've got Hinkley Point, all good and well, but that's only a small percentage of the total.
Yeah, and it's been focused on supply side rather than demand side. And so there's a very interesting, I don't know if you read the report this morning, there's an interesting report by the Policy Exchange.
No, I haven't. Yeah.
And I've just got it down here, and it's basically, it's called Power 2.0, Building a Smarter, Greener, Cheaper Electricity System. And it really does, I think, articulate and argue why the electricity and the DNO regime is based on a 1990s privatisation model that bears no relation to the practicalities and realities of a different grid and activity. So it's actually very interesting, and it argues very strongly for quite significant regime change, basically, in terms of Ofgem and government activity. But it hits, I think it really does hit the nail on the head with a whole raft of issues, and the system, the regulatory system, is not actually fit for purpose, given the increase in renewables and spare capacity and balancing the grid and all those kind of things, the things that are coming down the line, which predominantly are from European legislation rather than UK legislation. And they're all coming together. That's an interesting observation, but I mean they're all coming down the line. Electrification of transport and heating and all things are coming down the line, and they're all going to smart grids and all this kind of stuff. And the regulatory regime has not kept up with that. And
no, and then I think the interesting thing is I think we're at a sort of cusp where I really believe that renewable energy is sort of starting to become viable. I think we've generated 25% of our energy.
In fact, in this report this morning I read, so there's been a tenfold increase in renewables from 2020 to 2000, so like 32 gigawatts apparently, which I thought was a lot more than I
know, and then this is where I go, okay, with the subsidies, it's going slightly off tangent, but with the subsidies, you think, oh my God, it's just a little bit more of subsidies. I really think you would have, I think the subsidies had the required effect. Yeah. But I think, it's interesting. You get onto so many different things. But, I think, we're at the cusp, and you think we could just push it over the edge with, a few more years of subsidies and then tailoring it off. Then the other thing, what's a subsidy versus what isn't a subsidy, because we're talking about a Hinkley Point and things need to stand on their own 2 feet. Well, nuclear energy isn't doing that. And I think nuclear has a place in the sort of energy mix. I'm not sure about Hinkley Point. But, you could argue that actually nuclear energy is heavily subsidised.
And a level playing field and those kind of other cliche terms. But I think, coming back to the kind of energy efficiency and kind of, the activities. This Help to Heat Eco3 is not going to do much for carbon. It is fuel poverty. And I even think, even in terms of fuel poverty, I think if you and truly being affordable warmth, I think it misses the bigger issues of 40% of the fuel poor live in solid wall properties, and yet it's a focus on easy, cheaper measures that arguably have been done already. So any way you look at it, it's a jumbled policy instrument at best, and I think it'll be quite challenging to deliver, particularly in places that are suffering from market failure, like London, for example, where historically they haven't benefited from it, and it is going to be a real challenge delivering this, and expensive, I think, in terms of search costs and getting the vulnerable people to sign up to these sort of things, especially when the actual funding of the bottom line is not particularly attractive.
Yeah, I probably want to get back on the future of eco, but I've got a few more questions on current eco, if you like.
Yeah.
We talked about complexity and simplification. I think we sort of already identified where a lot of the complexity is coming from is the paperwork. Do you think there are any other areas of complexity, and how do you think the policy can simplify?
Yeah, I think I probably don't get too involved in the compliance thing, but my colleagues in compliance have said there's a whole easy way of actually doing this kind of stuff. So they've made recommendations in the consultation document on how to do that. So I think that is a big difference. And I think the other thing that I think is a concern is that the forwardness of the program. I'm trying to get the right terms, but the energy suppliers have met most of their targets anyway. So there isn't actually an active, particularly market. Mm-hmm. So eco rates I think are tailing off, and having no continuity. And I don't think the guidance has been published yet for Eco 3 yet, has it? I don't know. I don't think it has.
I think that will be a while.
So you've got this again, this stop inertia in the marketplace, and so you can't just kind of tap on and actually get things done. So I think
I think in reality, I believe that has to do, again, just sitting on the fence. I think it doesn't help, but it has to do with eco having to go in front of Parliament, and I think that the welcome things for me are we've got a 5-year commitment,
correct,
and obviously the 1 year
transition.
Transition is based on actually you can't have I think and I might have this wrong, but I believe that had to go in front of Parliament. Have enough time. There would be a stop. So with that in mind, they have tried to cater for this. But yeah, I think for me, simplification really is making it much more digital than it already is. That's for me is a key one. I'm not 100% sure where I am on the energy performance certificates, and I think the scoring is a difficult one.
At one level, my instinct says that the deemed scores ought to be a lot easier. But I've certainly, my colleagues in my previous employer, they have very strong objections to deemed scores.
Quite a few people have.
Yeah, and I kind of, from an engineering point of view, I kind of get that, and I think that there's that balance about do you do again, it's the cost versus benefit, I suppose.
I think for me that the complexity with the EPC was the scoring mechanism.
Yeah.
But the funny thing is, on the one hand, we've got the minimum energy efficiency standards, which are rated with an energy report, and now we've got a funding regime which completely moves away from that. So I think I was somewhere in the middle. I think the scoring should be deemed scores, and then you should probably have an EPC to give that holistic advice to them on what else they could do and where they could go.
Yeah.
And then as a secondary sort of check, if you like, to say we've had an energy report, how much carbon does it say it's produced, and then keep pulling the deem scores in line with the set model.
So you calibrate the deem scores, is what you're saying. Whereas I think just being rather crude, I haven't seen it recently, but there were the 10 archetypes, and I did think it was a rather a crude attempt. I can understand you've got to start somewhere, but I think this is also one of the points that I think is that the empirical evidence doesn't seem to be getting fed back into the policy. So, the good experience from CEST and CERT doesn't appear to be adopted. So, the point you just said to me about how do you think policy and this kind of stuff, I just think we're not getting, for whatever reason, we're not getting decent, good practice, empirical evidence back into policy. And it feels like, we're either, I don't know, we just don't seem to be, in terms of consultation and government consultation, not accepting for whatever reason, the experience of, say, 15 years of doing this. I mean, the suppliers' obligations have been going back, must be 15 years.
I think the other thing that I've got is, you know how in American startups or in startups in general that they talk about, particularly in the tech sector, they talk about pivoting an idea and pivoting your business model, and they launch it, and then they go, this is going to be the best product in the world, and then they end up doing something sort of very different from what they originally set out because the market sort of tells them. Twitter, obviously, they started out something completely different, and they just built an internal messaging system, and that became, if I'm right, what it is now. I don't think you need to sort of pivot as much as that. I think with current policy, what you do sometimes have is a lack of feedback or review. You remember the Green Deal is going to be the biggest retrofit program,
infrastructure program since the Second World War. Yes,
I know. And then this doesn't work, and we pull it. And it just seemed like at the time when it started to gain a little bit of traction is when we sort of binned it, and no one wants to put their name to it, really.
Yeah.
And it always seems to me like policies like this should have some sort of review period where you can actually tweak it rather than, either muddle on with something that doesn't work.
And to be fair, I mean, I was always in principle supporter of the Green Deal. But to be fair, I mean, I was involved in, in some of the early things, and there was a view that, it was be done for political. But as these things always are, there's always political expediency. But there was a view that things like the Golden Rule, people were not, in sort of design, certain best practice and other empirical evidence from that was not being picked up. And I worked for the Energy Savings Trust, and we did some early pilots, and we could never get the Golden Rule to really work. But that was inconvenient politically. So you felt as if things were just going ahead just because of the political expediency rather than true empirical evidence that has been researched.
Absolutely. And can you imagine if at that point we would have said, okay, just hold your horses, let's step back, let's tweak this Green Deal off, because I still think that pay as you say.
The bottom line is, it has to be done. Who's going to pay for it? And I actually think, I'm coming to the point, the energy strong model, which you may or may not be familiar with, but I mean, it's been cited as a goal. In principle, that seems a really good idea, and it's essentially a glorified Green Deal where you get zero carbon. But it is on paper it seems a really good.
But in another thing, it's actually almost quite naive to think that you could sit at your desk, come up with a golden rule, and you could roll out a multi-billion-pound infrastructure with no tweaks. What you originally assumed it would be. There's no feedback. There's no.
And this is, I think, arguably where government, and arguably better that government may not get involved in this, so that there is an argument that if it was left maybe to the private sector to get on with it. And I say that was a frustration, I think, for us and other people, that we were just about getting to see how things were working, and then that was pulled. And now that I think it's got such a bad kind of odour about it, from a bit of a term. You can't see anything coming down the line, despite that Dec historically said there's going to be something there, but you just see. It just feels it's off the agenda at the moment, and the eco element is reduced to kind of the bare real minimum, really, I suppose. And even that is a particularly complicated. I mean, I just see physically delivering that is going to be a real challenge. I think just the target audience and the ability to do it is going to be complicated, I think.
So let's sort of lead on to the sort of final question then. Your thoughts on the future of eco policy? We've got obviously a transition year, and then we've got sort of 4 years of what looks like to be help to heat.
Yeah.
What are your sort of thoughts, and what are your hopes and fears?
Well, I think, without being too negative, I think, the 5-year visibility and ring-fenced funding is to be welcomed. I mean, in the present economic climate, that's, not to be underestimated. So I think that's a really big tick. Again, it's a jumbled policy. I think if you start from scratch, you wouldn't end up with this animal. But
ironically, take the transition year out, they are starting from scratch.
Yeah, they are, and I think in many ways, I think that's going to be. I mean, my argument in the consultation was that I think the transition is quite drastic and quite short. So I actually think that the actual to get the supply chain and the whole entourage there is going to be a challenge. So I do feel, for example, the solid wall maximum levels at 1 million by 2020, I think, is pretty pedestrian.
So I don't think that's a solid wall target. I think that's the overall target.
It is the overall target. And I think it was a manifesto. But so I think that's pretty pedestrian. And I think, if you're being really objective about it, is it really going to provide affordable warmth? And I say the concerns I have about this is that you end up.
That's 200,000 homes a year, really. Yeah, business
as normal, I think, is even doing that. So it's not hugely and then I think I just think it is going to be, well, it depends what the carryover is like for energy companies. I mean, you'll know more about this than me, but I mean, there's a lot of discussion about that the carryover, and depending when that comes into place, I can't remember all the detail, but a lot of the early targets will have already been met. So meeting the minimum, and I can't remember what the solid wall target was, or the minimum, but has been met already, or will be met without any market intervention. So I think it's I think on balance it's if learnings are truly taken on board, as I think we've said, and empirical evidence is looked at and things reviewed maybe annually or whatever, so that it can be recalibrated and budgets shifted in a positive way. Yeah. I think then it ought to do something. But I say my concern in all this is I think it'd be focused on the cheaper cavity wall lofts, those kind of things, which arguably is there a market failure there? I don't know. And
what do you think about be focused on fuel poverty?
Well, I think in principle, I think if you've got limited budget, it ought to be focused on that. But I think, based on my experience of targeting genuine fuel poverty in London, particularly, which is private rented, it's incredibly difficult to target and expensive, and predominantly solid wall. So trying to do anything meaningful in what I would believe to be genuinely fuel poor areas, and I'm on the board of a charity that tries to do this as well. It is just incredibly challenging to target these vulnerable households and actually get stuff done. It's just incredibly difficult.
Yeah, I think the problem that I've got with it is that fuel poverty obviously has got the sort of three main factors, which is the level of income, energy prices, and the energy efficiency of the home. Focusing on just people in fuel poverty, I think it is obviously the right sort of moral thing to do. But unfortunately, in my opinion, it's the property is what makes a household fuel poor. So by just focusing it on fuel poverty, you might miss those easy to do homes.
And as all my clients, my local authority clients are saying, it depends on the resident at the time. Their income, that resident goes in a year, leaves. I mean, so the fuel poverty metric is constantly changing because of the residency, the tenants of that, the income may vary. I just see it being particularly complicated, and also trying to be blocks of flats and always the practical levels with deemed schools in London. It ought to be addressing market failures, the worst of the market failures, and I just can't see this actually doing it in areas that London, or Highlands of Scotland, or something other areas that traditionally have not benefited from any of these, and arguably ought to. I could see it being a challenge to actually do this at scale. And I think also for the energy suppliers, I think, after the first year or so, but when the kind of the carryover effect has been adjusted for or whatever, I think it is going to be a difficult, challenging, project to deliver at scale.
Yeah, I think my worry is specifically, so again, I think focusing on fuel poverty is the moral right thing to do, and fuel poverty is obviously a big concern. And I think again that they're trying to sort of kill two birds with one stone. My worry is the expense and pepper potting will actually drive the price up. Yes. Where it was very easy to, in the olden days, when I worked down in Plymouth, we did rows and rows of houses, which brings the cost down dramatically, and particularly if you look at hard to treat.
Yes.
If all of a sudden you can do number 3, 8, and 9, and the rest can't benefit, I don't think anyone benefits from that, and just the cost of acquisition becomes so much more.
I say currently, the cost of acquisition, I think it's 240. I mean, just for a relatively simple exercise, and I could see it being considerably higher. And I say from an energy company's point of view, you can just see, how they're going to do it at scale. I mean, it just the practicalities of this and the timescale, I think, are going to be very challenging. Which is why I hope that government may be able to, consider. I mean, another big element that they talk about in debt, which I'm not particularly keen on, is the brokerage scheme. And I think that is, I suppose, from a policy point of view, a way in which you could do this, buy your way out, I suppose. But I mean, given the track record of brokerage at the moment, I think there needs to be a significant improvement in quality. And
it's the risk, it's the blind buying from a supply point of view. You don't know who you're buying off, so you could, let's say, for argument's sake, you buy your entire obligation through the brokerage, and it ends up being, one delivery company with two people. It could be a one-man band.
This is the inherent problem. And so, I mean, my argument was, if you do need to do a proper independent economic assessment to see how viable and sensible it actually has been. But certainly, when I read the consultation some months ago, it did seem to me they were majoring quite, in terms of innovation. They were looking at that as and I kind of interpret that as a kind of a thing that they probably wanted to see an increase in. And the other bit I liked also was the R&D innovation element, which again and I was very supportive of that, because I do think it's, again, the market transformation activity of all this levy being spent on this area ought to be used in a kind of positive way. So, and I think some really good stuff was done. Certainly, I was at EST in terms of the innovation 5 or 6 years ago, and so I'm keen on that.
I'm very keen on that, and I think that there's so much opportunity to use this money to test quite a bit. Particularly, if you look, you might looking at where Tesla's going. Or is it Tesla? Yeah, it is Tesla, isn't it? The battery technology.
Oh yeah, or Maslow. I mean, we've installed some of these in Camden, and I mean, very interesting actually. Yeah, because we got some funding from National Energy Action, so we installed 40 Maslow and Leclanche systems and little PV systems. But it does. I mean, we've just installed, but I mean, the early indications are that, again, fuel poor homes, to see, it doesn't really seriously address affordable warmth, and they're going to be monitored for a year. But the initial feedback has been, we've been installed a couple of months, so it's been very, very positive.
Yes, and this is really where I'd like policies like this to focus, to do some of the bread and butter, if you like, but then also to say, actually, can we make a reality of some of these marketplaces? And as soon as you have battery technology at cost, and you'd imagine that, you'd install your solar panels, you could store that, you can use it at night.
We managed, and we did 40. I think the largest pilot, I think, that NEA were going to do it. But I mean, we were able to get some pretty decent economists, even only 40. I mean, if you'd rolled out, you did hundreds of thousands of things, and in difficult street properties in Victorian buildings, around the corner in Camden. They weren't easy ones, slate roofs and all that kind of, you're kind of all familiar with the practicalities, but we were able to do, and some, say they're being monitored for a year, but they, say the residents were delighted with it. And those are sort of things, the digital internet things and the smart grid and all that kind of stuff, and micro storage, I call it, and then you can have demand aggregators. I mean, Maslow, one of the battery suppliers, they do quite an interesting kind of software linkages of how they triangulate these installations, and then you can become a demand aggregator, which becomes very interesting.
And that's where I think the R&D should go. And actually, you might have that. We're talking about the wider strategy. That's where you might start discovering your wider strategy. Because if at the start of this interview we were saying, 25% of energy is generated through renewables now. If you get battery technology, you make homes more energy efficient.
Time of use tariffs, all that. I mean, and that's where I see, and this is where I say, if you want to read this policy exchange report, I mean, it is actually very timely, I think. So,
do you mind sending that to me? Actually, I'll sending a link. That'd be great.
Yeah, I'll send you a link. Yeah,
I'll put it in the show notes as well if anyone's listening. And finally, to close down, if there would be one piece of advice you could make to policymakers, what?
Okay. So what I've been saying for years: less rhetoric, more action.
Okay. Yes. No, that's.
I'm like a broken record, unfortunately, but I've been. This is what the profession is. That's, we just need to see more concerted action in this area.
Yes. That's very welcome. Okay, well, thank you very much. Okay, Simon, many thanks for your time there. Much appreciated. For those of you listening, I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think. Either get in touch via Twitter contact me via LinkedIn or leave any comments and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thank you.